So some good news, guys. A couple weeks ago, I was telling you guys I might ask a colleague of mine to come and instruct you on Quran whenever we got to that, and he has agreed to do that week. So Professor Muhammad Buknifi is his name. So he's a really good guy. He says, yeah, he's really excited to come. So yeah, I'm gonna get together with him one day soon and kind of tell him what we're doing and all that good stuff. I might have to flip the reading around that week since he's gonna come. I think I had it as kind of a secondary Friday reading. I might move it to the main week reading. That way he's not coming just to talk about a Friday reading, right? That we normally would kind of skim over. So, but yeah, it'll be a good time. I'll have to look and see what I'm going to cut to make room for him. But I figure that'll give a nice perspective. Here in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk a lot about Christianity and its influence on medieval and Renaissance literature. Well, the Islam was also a major part of the world during those Middle Ages. So he'll definitely balance out whatever I have to say about the influence of Christianity. He'll bring the Islamic perspective to things. So yeah, good. It'll be good. We'll have a guest lecture one day, probably in October. I think that's when we finally get to that stuff. So yeah, very, very good. So today we're going to talk about all these Greek dramas that we've read. So, but Medea, Oedipus, as well as Lysistrata. So you get two very famous Greek tragedies and one Greek comedy. So next week we're going to end our discussion of the ancient period with Virgil's The Aeneid. Virgil's The Aeneid will be our main week reading next week. So that is a Roman story, and it's about what happens after the Trojan War. So you'll kind of get the story. You'll kind of get the rest of the mythology of the Iliad, as far as how the city of Rome was founded. So the city of Rome came out of Troy. The character of Aeneas. He was kind of a minor character in the Iliad, but we'll get all that stuff wrapped up next week whenever you'll read about the Trojan horse and all that good stuff next week. So that will wrap up our unit on the ancients. This Friday's readings will be readings from the Old Testament. So you'll read the Genesis creation story. You'll read a little bit about Abraham. You'll read about I think the bit in there about Abraham getting ready to sacrifice Isaac. I think that's in there. And you'll also read some of the Exodus stuff. So you'll get a little bit of Old Testament readings for Friday. That's a little challenging because talking about scripture like it's literature, right? That might seem that's kind of a off-putting thing in a way, right? Because it's holy scriptures. So, but you know, I'll kind of, whenever we talk about it, I'll kind of give you guys the educational bit of it. I'm not going to moralize to you or anything like that, so no worries there. So, but yeah, you'll get a little bit about that. A lot of the classic Old Testament, especially Torah stuff, that is still held as the main foundational text for Judaism. So Then a couple of weeks from now, you'll read some stuff from the Gospels. So you'll get some of that as well. So again, talking about whenever we talk about Islamic scripture, right? A lot of us are kind of amateurs to that kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to hear a different perspective of someone who follows that religion. So yeah, that's looking ahead. So next week I want to talk about the first paper in the class. So I'm waiting until after the ancient period, because I'm going to give you the choice as far as different texts you can pick from the ancient period to do your first short paper on. So yeah, next week I will discuss that as well. What the first short paper, or I'll give you some writing instruction and all that good stuff. So enjoy your last week before you have to start writing, is while you have it. At least for me. So
Do you do APA style papers or MLA?
I usually do MLE,
You do?
but
Okay.
yeah, but whatever you prefer.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you are more comfortable with APA, then by all means use that. Okay. A lot of different other class, pretty much everybody besides English uses APA. English and speech were the only people that use MLA. So that'll actually be kind of good for me if you do use that, Kaylee, because I'm supposed to be teaching APA at my other school. So if you write in that, you might even give me a nice writing sample I can give my students. So yes, use it if you like.
They have the new 7th edition out now of the APA.
Do they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get a copy of that handbook so that I can know the rules. I don't think I've ever written a paper in APA in my life. Now I'm supposed to be teaching it, so yeah, this will be fun. Yeah, at Bluefield State, the English 101 courses, they tell us to teach that instead of MLE, just because that's what more people use, which makes sense. So the kind of general rule of why you learn MLE and even in English 101 is because the idea is if you learn how to do one, you can easily pick up how to do the others. Um, yeah, I don't know about that. There's a lot of differences between them, but I digress. So let's go ahead and get to the plays then. Which one to talk about first? Good Lord. All right, we have child murder. We have a man marrying his mother accidentally. All right. We have a play about women going on a strike, a sex strike. So that's our three texts for this week. Right. So where do we even begin? It's the question. Um, let's start with Oedipus, since that's our main week. Then we'll move into Medea, and then we will talk about Lysistrata last, just because it's the comedy of the bunch. So I actually put together a nice. I'm normally not a death by PowerPoint teacher, but I actually have a nice PowerPoint on Oedipus. So I will show it to you. I made it for my theater class, um, just to teach them how to do PowerPoints. So yeah, I will go over it as some introduction stuff. Then we can kind of use that as a segue over into discussion. So I will share this. It's available for you on our Brightspace page. There's a folder up for this week on Oedipus. So if you guys want to pull that up on your own screens even and follow along, it's there. Yes, I normally don't make PowerPoints, so this is like a one-time treat. So if you consider getting lectured from PowerPoint a treat. Normally I'm a very chaotic teacher. I just kind of go with the flow. A lot of the time I don't even have a plan when I come in here. I'm just like whatever's on the top of my head, right? So I'm one of those kind of teachers. Yeah, I function in chaos.
That interview with that lady on Medea, that was a good one.
Did you like that interview with
Yeah.
my friend Phil when he interviewed that lady? Yeah. Yeah, I went to graduate school with him. He's super really good with theater stuff. So I figured I would share that with you all. He's very good. He's kind of dry, right? He's kind of got that dry vibe about him, but that's just his thing. So he's a really good lecturer. Oedipus, Sophocles' tragedy, Oedipus the king. So I'll go over this with you guys, and then we'll kind of segue over into talking about it. Of course, this one was our main read for the week. So the playwright Sophocles from ancient Greece. So Sophocles was writing. So the previous reading we did was the Iliad. The Iliad goes way back to like 800 or 900 BC. Whenever people started writing stuff down, that's how far back the Iliad goes. Sophocles was writing about 468 to about 406 BC. So this guy was writing 400 years before the birth of Christ. So it's kind of amazing to think about that. And the classic period of ancient Greece was that far back, 400 years even before the birth of Christ. This period was known as the Golden Age of Greece. So during this period, the Golden Age of Greece, of course, there's two famous city-states, Athens and Sparta. Athens was more of the center of culture and law and democracy. And without the ancient city of Athens, we probably wouldn't have the idea of democracy today. The Athenians invented the sciences and philosophy. So, and drama, as we are finding out today. So Sophocles was one of the first great dramatists. Aeschylus actually was one of the first playwrights. You guys didn't read any of him. In our theater class, we read some Aeschylus. Aeschylus is kind of primitive, so that's the main reason why we don't read him much. Sophocles is the first really great one, as well as Euripides, who wrote Medea. All these guys were writing in about the same time period. So what's Sophocles known for? Extreme, intense characterizations. So before Sophocles, you didn't have plays with more than two people on stage at once. Okay, Sophocles has at least three people on stage at once. So this allows for some like good character development. Before Sophocles plays had a lot of exposition, like they would tell you things that were going on. They didn't really dramatize it so much. You would just have like a character getting up and giving a speech, like this is what's going on. And it really wasn't acted out. So Sophocles did a lot to invent drama as we know it today. So there's probably a lot of things about the play that you guys might have found interesting. Like, for instance, the character of the chorus. Like what's going on with the chorus. anytime you guys read these Greek plays, we had all three of them had a chorus. A chorus is usually like of the voice of the people. So like what does the public voice of the people say? So usually if you have a chorus, it's kind of a stand-in for all the people. Of course, Kaylee, you said you listened to that video about Medea that Phil did, but the lady in that video talked about how ancient Greek drama was even really musical. That's something that's kind of been lost on us today. Like, what did the music sound like? The chorus also had a musical element to it.
Especially, I think in Lysistrata, you can almost really see him singing the play out.
Right.
And it rhymed a lot.
Yeah, that definitely has an effect, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the chorus is said to have a musical element involved too. So that's something that scholars of the ancient period kind of have to parse out. There's a lot of interesting scholarship being done right now by scholars of that time period. But some of Sophocles' other famous plays, Antigone, we read that one in our theater course. Oedipus Rex, and Oedipus at Colonus, and Electra. So I wanted to briefly, or you got a question real quick, Amy?
No, I'm sorry. I had to join on my phone because my computer died.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, the person I want to introduce real quickly now is Aristotle, because Aristotle will give us some context for which to have our discussion. But Aristotle is one of the famous Greek philosophers of the time period. Without Aristotle, there wouldn't be knowledge as we know it today. I don't think I lectured you guys on this a couple of weeks ago, but this is the time period of the Greek philosophers as well. Of course, you start out with Socrates. Of course, if any of you guys are in here really future teachers, I think several of you are, right? You might have heard the term Socratic method, which is the type of teaching that comes from intense questioning. Right? If a teacher teaches Socratically, like I'll be lecturing, and then I'll be like, "Hey, Holly, what do you think about this?" Right? That's kind of like Socratic teachings when you kind of are expecting to be called on. But Socrates, the first Greek philosopher, Plato was Socrates' great disciple, and Aristotle was the third great philosopher of the time period. I really wish I could teach Introduction to Philosophy here at Southern because it's a passion project, but sadly, I don't have a master's degree in philosophy. After getting a doctorate degree in English, I have no desire to go back to school to do anymore. So sadly, no. But I know enough to throw a little bit in here and there. But Aristotle is extremely influential. I mean, this guy invented all the fields of knowledge. He invented rhetoric. So if you guys took English 101 and you learned about stuff like logos, ethos, pathos, Aristotle invented that. He invented the study of poetics, study of drama. Not only that, he invented all the sciences, biology, physics, chemistry. Aristotle's the guy who kind of classified knowledge in all these disciplines. And the reason why I bring him up here is in his book, The Poetics, he invented a lot of terms and terminology to talk about tragedy. So one of the great terms is catharsis. Aristotle argued what catharsis is. It's this outpouring of emotion. So Aristotle argues every tragedy should have a moment where the audience is kind of like gets sad, and really this is the moment in a tragedy where everybody like cries, right? This is the sad moment, the outpouring of emotions. You guys have ever heard the term cathartic? Right, that's cathartic. That comes from this word catharsis. That means outpouring of emotions. So, like, let's say you go to a therapist, right? You learn something about yourself. You say that's cathartic, right? Well, that's where that term comes from. We could kind of point to where that is in Oedipus. That's when Oedipus learns the truth and kind of pokes his eyes out at the end. That's a really violent image, right? When he kind of tears his own eyes out. We also have, he also invented a bunch of other terms: tragic recognition, reversal. Aristotle argues there's a moment in tragedies where the character realizes that something that happened beyond his control. So in this play, we can also point to that specific moment, like when Oedipus starts putting the end of the pieces, like, oh, I'm the person responsible for the kingdom having a plague on it. So Aristotle did a lot to invent the theater and the way we think about tragedy. He also wrote a lot about comedy, but those writings didn't make it. Those writings got lost throughout history. So if you read through his Poetics, he even says, like, I'm getting ready to talk about comedy now. But no, we don't have that. It got lost in the dustbins of history. So a very sad thing. Just as a quick digression, there's a lot of the reason why we have all these plays, all these texts from ancient Greece that haven't even made it to us today, is because of the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church preserved a lot of these old plays throughout the centuries. So think about how long it's been, almost 2,500 years since these plays have been written. So the church did a lot to preserve these plays throughout history. Both the Catholic Church as well as Islam, they preserved a lot of this stuff during the Middle Ages. There's a lot of speculation that the church might be sitting on some lost books of Aristotle and stuff that they just never released to the public. There's a lot of like conspiracy theories about that. But there's a lot of old books down in the Vatican somewhere that they just never let loose because maybe it goes against Christian thinking or something, right? So there's lots of conspiracy theories about that. It's a fun thing to think about, like how much maybe there's a lost book from Aristotle that they just never let out. But he's really relevant here to our drama. One of the main things he says about this play, he was a fan of Sophocles. He didn't like Euripides, though, but he really liked Sophocles. One of the things that he says is a tragedy always has to happen to a good person. A play can't be tragic if the character who's going through the tragedy is a bad person. Well, that's up for debate on this play. Do you feel sorry for Oedipus or not, for what happens to him? Is it his fault that he married his mother? Right. We could have that debate in a second. But Aristotle, you can bet that I'll probably talk a lot about him throughout the rest of the course. Because Aristotle also influenced everything, the Christian religion, almost anything you can think of. Definitely influenced theology. But so what happens in the play? A brief summary. A curse has fallen over Thebes. Oedipus, who became king after saving Thebes from the Sphinx, tries to understand why the god Apollo has cursed the land. Oedipus discovers that he accidentally fulfilled a prophecy told at his birth that he would marry his mother and murder his father. Despite having tried his whole life to avoid that prophecy, Oedipus accidentally feels it as he was left to die at birth, having been rescued by a shepherd. In shame, Oedipus blots out his own eyes and is then banished from the land. So that is a plot summary and basic gist of what happens here. This stuff about the Sphinx, I don't know if the book told you guys this. The way Oedipus became king, he solved a riddle. The Sphinx, of course, you guys know what the Sphinx looks like from ancient Egypt. But the Sphinx put a curse. As long as somebody could solve its riddle, until somebody could solve its riddle. And the riddle was, let me actually, I know the riddle. I want to Google the exact words.
It says, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening?
Yeah, any of you guys want to take a guess on the answer to that? So read that again, Kaylee.
What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening?
I see you over there thinking it over, Paige. You want to take a guess?
No, I have no idea. Make it really hard.
There's a reason why nobody could solve it in Thebes, right? There's a reason why Oedipus.
Is it man?
It's a man, right? It's a man. So a man, right? Read that again, Kaylee.
What walks on 4 legs in the morning,
Right.
2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening?
Right.
It says man, because human crawling on all 4s in infancy, walk on 2 feet in adulthood, and use a cane in old age.
Right. Baby crawls on all 4s. In adulthood, we walk on 2 legs. In our old age, we have to have a walking cane. Right. So yeah, a good riddle from the Sphinx. It was definitely a mind twister that nobody could figure out.
That was really clever.
Yeah. So bring that up in casual conversation with your buddies. Right? See if your friends can guess. Yeah, that's what Oedipus figures out. He becomes king as a result. So fun little bit of mythology there for you. So some key themes in the play, key themes. So of course, anytime we talk about themes, that's major ideas in literature. So every week, whenever we talk about stuff, I try to identify the themes. Like, what's the play about? Beyond what happens, what's the play about? What big ideas are present in the play? Well, we have freedom of will versus fate. So how much choice do we have to determine our own actions versus how much are our lives predetermined about the gods? Right, so Oedipus seeks to carve out his own destiny, but no matter what he does, he still fulfills the fate of the gods. Blindness is a key theme in the play. Blindness. Not only Oedipus blotting out his own eyes, we also have the character Tiresias, who is the prophet. Tiresias, the irony of the play is Tiresias can see, even though he's blind. He knows the truth because Apollo was kind of illuminated him to the truth. Oedipus can see, but he really can't. So blindness is definitely a motif in the play. The cruelty of the gods. This is another play where we kind of really see that the Greek gods didn't really have the best interest of humanity at heart. Because it seems a little cruel, the trick that Apollo plays on Oedipus. Of course, we learn about Apollo. He's the one cursing the Greeks in the Iliad at the beginning. So we had a good conversation about that a couple of weeks ago, how the gods interfered in that war, especially. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say about the role of women in ancient Greece. We have Costa, who is Oedipus's mother slash wife, and we also have Oedipus's daughters. Oedipus mentions at the end of the play, hey, what's going to happen to my daughters now? They're incestuous. Nobody's going to want to marry them. Well, in ancient Greece, that's bad, right? If nobody wants to marry you, that's bad if you're a woman, because of the Greek patriarchy. Should prophecy be listened to? Is another question I put up as a key theme. In heroism, is Oedipus in fact a hero? So I have to mention some psychology here with this play. Have any of you guys heard of Mr. Sigmund Freud before? Any of you guys familiar with his psychology? Okay, Kaylee, you've encountered Mr. Freud before at some point in your education before this. Yeah, if any of you guys are going to be future teachers, Freud was the psychologist who invented psychology.
Yeah, I've been learning about him here recently. I've got my psychology class this semester.
What have you learned about him? What have you learned about him, Matt?
He was kind of one of the founding fathers of psychology.
Right.
I just heard that he was weird.
Well, he had this thing where
Did I freeze up, or did Kaylee freeze up?
they thought that boys were obsessed with their mother. Did I freeze up?
Yeah. I think I remember talking about that with Frankenstein.
Yeah, I brought it up with Frankenstein.
I did a whole comparison of him to Logan from Psycho.
They've disproved a lot of his stuff by now, but back then he thought that boys were obsessed with their mothers, and a lot of sex. Didn't he do the all about sex, like your emotions and your sex? Was that Sigmund Freud too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to basically sum up his beliefs, to sum up his thinking about early childhood psychology. This is about a boy child, okay? And he got this idea from this play, Oedipus the King. He said that a boy, a young infant, a boy gets an overbearing attachment to his mother, right? Just like you said, Caleb. A boy gets an overbearing attachment. And Freud, of course, you can define what overbearing attachment means, but Freud said it went as far as being almost like a sexual attachment. Like the young infant has that deep of an attachment to the mother. Well, at some point in that child's development, the father figure comes into the picture. And the father figure teaches the young boy that is taboo. Like, I'm the one who has the relationship with the mother, not you. Right? There's a boundary between your relationship. Right? There's not a boundary between ours. So that is kind of the first moment of trauma in a boy's life when the boy realizes that there's a limit between the relationship between he and his mother. And it's all downhill for us men from there, Freud says. So it's the same idea with women and their fathers. Freud got this idea from another Sophocles play, Electra. Right? But it's the same idea with women and their fathers, that women, young female children would grow that attachment to their fathers. When the mother figure became involved, that the traumatic experience happens with them too.
It's the beginning of daddy issues.
Exactly, right. The term daddy issues, that's where that comes from. Right, so we people still joke about this stuff today, right? So if a girl's father abandons her early in life, right, well, she shows a lot of maybe the girl was promiscuous or something, right? Later, if her father abandons her, right? Well, they'll say she's got daddy issues, right? Or she get, maybe like you have an 18-year-old girl getting like a 40-year-old man, right? Right, daddy issues. It's the same with boys and their mothers, right? So you see some men who seem that have a hard time breaking away from their mothers, even into adulthood. I have one of my best friends. He's actually an attorney. The guy's probably got $1 million, more than $1 million in the bank account, but he's almost my age, about 30, mid-30s. To this day, he has never had a girlfriend. He's not gay, but he's never had a girlfriend or anything. He still lives with his mother. So yeah, she's kind of got that domineering personality over him. Because Bella, you mentioned Psycho earlier, right? It's
Yeah, Norman's like obsessed with his mom, and he straight up murders her whenever he figured out that she has a boyfriend, and then like he keeps her corpse in a fruit cellar, and like he acts like his mom sometimes and thinks that, oh, his mom is jealous of him if he starts liking someone, so he kills them because of like that.
you know, the classic Alfred Hitchcock film from the 60s.
It's also a novel. It ain't bad.
Yeah, it's a shame we didn't do that one in our film class, Matt. I do that one sometimes. Yeah, like I said, my friend to this day, he's never dated or anything. So like we joke, plus me and the other guys joke that he's got an Oedipus complex, right? So you know, we've told him that to his face, so we're not talking behind his back. We told him that to his face. So he doesn't like it very much whenever we say that. But you guys know how guys razzle each other. So, but you know, that is Sigmund Freud in a nutshell. What do you guys think about this idea? Before I move on, do you think that Freud is right about some of this? Maybe not to the extent he takes it, but do you feel like he's right to talk about, do you feel like he's right to especially talk about this attachment that kids from the opposite sex get to their parent of the opposite sex? You feel like he's right about that? Are any of you guys absolutely repulsed by this idea?
I think it's a very weird way to view things. And I don't know how we came up with it, but I'm not rocking with it.
Right. Yeah, he did a lot of cocaine, Holly, so that might have had something to do with it. Probably didn't hurt. It's a bit of a it's a bit of a it's a different, right? It's different. I know the first time that I learned about this, I'm like, what? Right? What? Say what now? But I just personally, the more that I've observed the world into my old age, the more I think he's right about certain stuff. So take that what you will. I just saw your note, Amanda, where you said you've taken so many education classes that you've heard about him every semester.
Yeah, it is kind of odd, his theory, but they do say that when you grow older, like girls will go out with people that reflect somebody that acts like their dad, or boys will go out with girls that act like their mom.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true. I've always heard that they say that you marry your father.
Right? If you're a person that has quote unquote daddy issues, right? Usually that's a male figure who can't be trusted. Right. So it's interesting. It's interesting stuff to kind of wrap your mind around. He had a lot of other interesting theories too, like the death drive. Right? He says we're all sort of subconsciously trying to work towards our own death every day. That was another one of his theories. And if you guys are into psychology, right, he's an interesting fellow. But that's where he invented this, was Oedipus. Later in the class, we'll talk about William Shakespeare's Hamlet. William Shakespeare's Hamlet. Hamlet has a almost overbearing attachment to his mother. So this idea will come up again. So there's lots of good, interesting passages in the polity we could probably point to. I used the other book, I think, whenever my theater book, whenever I came up with these. I actually like the translation and our book better. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of an interesting exercise. Like if you see these plays in different books, the translations are different. That's an interesting thing to think about. Some good passages. The early in the play, they talk about the curse that's kind of hanging over the land. Like things are bad in Thebes to start the play. It kind of reminds you of 2020, right? When people were just dropping dead. We didn't know why, right? From the virus. It kind of puts you into that mindset. Tragic reversal. The reversal in the plays when Tiresias reveals to Oedipus that he's the cause. Oedipus is like, "Oh man, tell me what's the cause? Why is Apollo cursing us? You're the cause." Oedipus is like, "Say what?" Right. So that's the moment of reversal. And when Oedipus discovers that he murdered a man on the road on his way to Thebes, he didn't realize it. He kind of pieces together in his head that that was his father. At one point, Jocasta warns Oedipus to stop. Like, this is hidden knowledge, right? If you don't, knowledge has consequences. If you keep taking this further, you're going to regret it. So she kind of knows, right? She kind of figures it out before he does. She's like, dude, don't take it any further. Knowledge has consequences. Well, he does. Look what happens. Then, of course, the passage where Oedipus tears out his eyes is an interesting passage, as well as when Oedipus laments his daughter's futures. who's going to want to marry my daughters? Right? They're born of incest. And then the discussion questions. These are pretty much the same questions I put up on the discussion board, which you guys don't have to answer them since you're here. So yeah, there's your PowerPoint. But you guys tell me, what did you make of this play? Had you guys heard about this myth before, the Oedipus myth? Did the play kind of catch you by surprise as far as what it was about? How did the reading experience go with this one?
I can kind of like compare it to like a roller coaster in a way. It was just like, okay, this is happening. There's like, I'm sorry, it's hard to explain. My brain is kind of frazzled right now. But like Oedipus gets like this, well, someone tells him about what this prophecy, and he's like, okay, whatever, does some stuff. Then he starts piecing stuff together, as you said, and it's like, oh, yep, I killed my dad. And then it just like goes all downhill from there. And like I actually heard about Oedipus before because I watched a YouTube video about like some Greek myths and stuff, and he popped up. And I was like, what? This dude marries his mom and tears out his eyes? What's this about? But this is my first time actually reading it because I was always too scared.
Yeah, I'd actually already had an idea of what Oedipus was about because last semester in my English 102 class, we watched the play of Antigone, which takes place after Oedipus. So I'd already knew a little bit about it going into it.
Which play did you like better, Matt, Antigone or this?
I don't know. It's a tough one. I think I still lean towards Antigone, but
yeah, Antigone's another great one. It's about death and burial and tyranny and all kinds of good stuff. So yeah, if that one was in our book, I would probably teach it in this class.
One thing that I always found interesting about Oedipus is the way it shows how the Greeks viewed fate in a way, because despite all the attempts to defy it, it still persisted. And if you really want to get into it, their decisions trying to defy fate is what led to their fate. So it kind of shows that it's not the end result despite your actions, it's the end result because of your actions.
Right, you sum that up beautifully, Holly. This theme of fate, right? Can we escape our fates? Are our lives predetermined? And this play definitely, no matter how hard you try to avoid the fate, it still happens. So that's kind of the cruelty of the gods that work here. Oedipus had heard his whole life that he had this prophecy that he would marry his mother and murder his father. He tried to avoid that, but he thought that his parents were way back home in this other place. So he's like, I'm going to move away so this will never happen. Well, little does he know he was given up at birth. They needed Ancestry.com back in these days. They need, or the Maury Povich show, right? Who's your father? Who's your mother?
Actually, thinking about that would have been hilarious. You are the father. And like get like Jerry Springer in on it too.
Did they tie his little feet and his hands so that he was more apt to like not get rescued?
Yes.
to defy that fate.
Yeah, they were going to give Oedipus, they were going to let Oedipus die, leaving him out in the wilderness because he was just an infant.
They did that a lot right back then, right?
They did, especially in Sparta. If you weren't, if you showed any type of form of disability or something, you couldn't
Yeah.
you couldn't be a part of that military society. Yeah, they would leave babies out to die. And little seems heartless, right? But that's what they would do. Like, there's nobody in Sparta was dragged on society, right? Nobody got handouts, I guess you could probably say. Everybody had to do the part. If you couldn't. So, this whole fate thing is part of this puzzle. So here's my question for you guys. Do you feel like Oedipus deserved any of this? Like Aristotle says, right, that tragedies can't happen to an evil person. This will be a good way to segue over into Medea in a second. But he said that tragedies can't happen to an evil person. Well, do you guys mostly see Oedipus as good? Or do you guys feel like Oedipus got what was coming to him in some ways? How much did you sympathize with him? Tough one, right?
Honestly, I just don't think anyone deserves what he got. That
Right? And that doesn't matter how sick of a person you are, right? You deserve to find that out, especially if you've had children with your mother. Right? That's the anybody would tear their eyes out after hearing that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't care how bad of a person. That's a lot for one person to handle and to find out.
Yeah, especially since the fact that he didn't even know that his wife was his mom. Like he just thought, oh, I love this woman. This woman is not blood related to me at all. And then like to find out that and everything else that happens, like that's very emotionally stressful for one person to go through. Like no matter how bad and or good they were.
Yeah, I always like to pose the question, if Oedipus knew that this was a chance, why did he marry an older woman? Why didn't he marry a much younger woman? Okay, I like to pose that question.
That is true. He could have probably pieced things together a little better.
It seems like you'd be really cautious if everybody went on and on and on about your fate is going to be this. And so it does seem like you would be more cautious
TLDR, Oedipus has
or
mommy.
paranoid.
Did you say Oedipus has mommy issues, Bill?
Yeah, that's what I got.
I was gonna say the same.
Me too.
Maybe he just liked them older, right? And maybe that was his thing.
Maybe he was secretly hoping it was going to be his mom.
Oh, how about like I was like, yeah, maybe. Because remember I first heard about that play, I thought he intentionally married his mom.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, this boy wants to commit Sweet Home Alabama. Like I was like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, not intentionally, but he could have avoided it if he would have just married younger. So yeah, one reason why he married her was probably not just out of love, but also politics, right? Just because she was the widowed queen of the land. So whenever he became king, that would have been a really convenient thing, right? To sort of solidify his power politically, to marry the widowed queen. So that's part of it too.
Did she act? Did like Oedipus's mom actually knew that she was his mom? I think she did, right?
There's a moment in the play where she kind of figures it out before he does, right? Because she's like, "Hey, Oedipus, quit asking questions. You're not gonna like where it goes."
Yeah, because I'm over here like, if she knew that she was Oedipus's mother, why didn't she just say no?
That was my thoughts also.
I don't think she necessarily knew when she married him, but like once all this stuff started coming out, I think she kind of pieces it together before he does.
Do you think it's more important to him to have the power and to be than to worry about who he's marrying?
Yeah, especially for this guy who had he came from this outside kingdom,
For
you know,
nothing.
right? For nothing. If he, oftentimes marriages back in those days didn't really come out of love. And this goes all the way up to almost the end of our course in the 1900s. Only fairly recently in human history did people finally start getting married out of love. For the most part, there was what we call a marriage economy, where fathers would kind of pass property down with their daughters. So, like, in order to marry off a daughter who was kind of like a burden on the father financially, the father would give away money or property for somebody to marry the daughter. So oftentimes marriages were prearranged in this kind of way, where women didn't really marry out of love. It was more so out of necessity. So kind of a sad thing to think about, right?
It is. And I remember in Lysistrata it says that our dads give all these dowries away for it makes that big joke about it.
Right. That's where that came from, right? The father would give the dowry to oftentimes these young girls often in ancient Greece were 14 or 15. They would marry some 50-something-year-old man and who had money and who was already established. So it's a little creepy to think about, right? But a little creepy. Yeah, all that started way back with the Greeks, and it persisted through up until the 18 or 1900s. At the very end of our course, we'll read a book called Madame Bovary. It's a book about an adulteress, I think I told you guys, but part of the reason why she is a cheater is because she didn't really love the guy she got with in the first place. He was kind of forced on her. So we'll have lots of good conversations when we get to that.
The Greeks are like a different breed of people. Like they're just way out there.
Very, very much so, Presley. Very, very much so. There's no way you can kind of beat around the bush when it comes to the Greeks as far as teaching them, right? They are what they are, right? So there's no way you can kind of put a spin on them any other way. This was the time period before, of course, the ancient Greeks, they had really no idea of Judaism, and the Christian religion definitely hadn't been invented yet. So yeah, this was very much a different time period.
And so that's why everybody looks for something to believe in and something to follow. And they really listened to the gods back then. They really believed and listened to them, right?
Right. Yeah. Listen to the gods. Fate. Right? No, they didn't really have an idea of heaven, right? Like
Right.
everybody went to Hades.
Yeah.
So now they did believe in reincarnation. They did believe you would go to Hades for a little while and then you would get reincarnated again. They did believe that. But yeah, as far as religion goes, it wasn't a very hopeful place to be. And one reason why when the Christianity was founded in Rome, that's one reason why the Greek religion died. Like which one would you rather be on, right? A religion of hope and redemption, or a religion where everybody's going to go to hell, right? But there's not real, think about it. Like if you had the choice, which one sounds better, right? There's really no comparison. Like that's one reason why the Greek religion died after Christianity was invented, or not invented, founded, I should say, is probably the better word. There's still some people in Greece today that still worship the old gods, Zeus and Apollo and Athena. There's still some people who do worship them.
I have a teacher at Lindsay Wilson who actually she had this boyfriend, and the reason that they ended up breaking up was because he still worshipped Zeus, and like he really, really did. She was raised, Southern Baptist, so she was like, "That's great, I'm happy for you, but this just isn't going to work." And just like some people still believe in reincarnation, a lot of people still do.
Yeah,
But
that definitely
he was
sounds like a deal breaker.
I thought she was joking, but no.
Yeah, a lot of Eastern religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, a lot of those still hold to reincarnation. So that's definitely more of an Eastern idea today than it is a Western idea. Hinduism, especially, that's where reincarnation and karma and all that comes from. You guys will have to take Tassine's non-Western world lit class if you want to learn about all that. That's not my area of expertise. I know a little bit about it, not enough to hold a conversation, probably not enough to teach you about it. But yeah, this play is definitely something else. That's probably the only way to describe it. And now let's segue into talking about Medea. Now we're going to go from this to drama on steroids. Right? Yeah, I should have probably had you guys read Oedipus first because it's a little tamer. I could have kept building up the craziness, but I gave you the craziness first. Then we can kind of build on that. But Medea, what to say about this one? Well, of course, plot summary, right? To sum up, it's about a lady who of course, to find out about the myth of her, Jason went for this relic called the Golden Fleece, right? The Golden Fleece. Medea's parents were the ones who had the Golden Fleece. So when Jason went adventuring through Medea's kingdom, he seduced her. And he seduced her, like, help me get this Golden Fleece. You can run back to Greece with me. So it works. He convinces her to even murder her own brother in order to get the fleece and steal it and take it back. So before the play even begins, we already know that Medea has even betrayed her own family in order to get with this guy, Jason. What happens at the beginning of this? Jason's ready to give her up, right? Jason's ready to free Bird. And Medea no longer holds any value to him as far as his advancement. He wants power. He wants power. So he wants to marry the king's daughter. And this will put him in line to be the next king if he gets to marry the king's daughter. I think that's the case. I don't know if that king had a son or not. That would probably put that would, if the king had a son, that would put him in line over Jason. But
Is that the same Creon?
it's not. No, it's not.
It's not.
It's a different one. If you read Antigone, which Matt mentioned earlier, it's the same Creon in that from Oedipus. Creon's the antagonist in Antigone. He's the one everything bad happens to in that play. But now it's a different one here in Medea. That's a good question, Kaylee. I'm glad you asked that. That is confusing. Yeah, the king, this Jason gets with this daughter of the king to get next in line. Well, Medea, you can pack your bags. You can go away politely. Well, they have children. Well, the children, by Jason doing this, the children are going to kind of be delegitimized. Right? They're going to kind of lose their right to Jason's wealth, Jason's money, even a right to their title. Jason, by marrying this new woman, is pretty much making them bastards. Okay, that's pretty much what he's doing. He's completely delegitimizing them. So the phrase "hell hath no fury like a woman scorned," right? That's what this play is, where this idea came from, right? Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Medea just kind of goes completely off the rails, plots like she wants to get back at Jason any way she can. And well, you guys know how it ends. Right? She brutally murders Jason's new wife, and then to get back at him at the end, she kills her own children. And she just kind of completely splits out and goes over the rails, and she gets away with it. That's one of the things too about this movie. She gets away with it. She escaped. She pretty much escapes on her broomstick at the end, right? She's a witch. She pretty much escapes on her broomstick at the end and laughs at him. He's kind of like crying over everybody around him dying. So this is a play where evil prevails, which is another reason why the play kind of rubs people the wrong way. So there's my plot summary of what happens. What are some themes? Probably betrayal is definitely one. Again, the rights of women in ancient Greece. Family lineage, right? That's part of the problem. Medea's own children are going to be delegitimized. Immigration is a theme in this play. What'd you say, Kaylee?
Power
Power
and exile.
Power and exile. She works out a nice exile plan. Okay. Immigration, like she's an immigrant. So like, is that a lot of the question is that one of the reasons why she's so evil? It's because she's not a Greek, she's an immigrant. She's a barbarian. That's that there's a lot of that's definitely a theme here too. So lots to even like, how far should you go for revenge? How far is too far?
It made me think about, remember when that lady drowned all her kids in the bathtub?
Yeah, back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andrea Yates, I think was her name.
Yep.
Yates.
And then I thought maybe after something like that happens to you and you've been exiled and your kids are bastards, like, but back then there was no such thing as like mentally insane. They thought it was just evil spirits, right? So because it could drive you mentally insane and you could not be in your right mind, like that's no excuse to kill your kids. But if something like that happened and you're not clear-minded thinking, then you just like lose it. And if they're going to be bastards anyway and nobody's going to have us around, then they might as well. I put on my post, my mom used to say, I brought you into this world, I could take you out.
Right.
Put me in the mind of that.
Yeah,
that
and
fun-
they treated like immigrants and stuff bad, especially like bastard children. They would have been treated really bad for a
Yeah.
mistake that their parents made.
Like maybe like Medea from her perspective might have been thinking, yeah, she did kill her kids despite her ex-husbands because of the fact that, I love you, but I'm gonna go marry some random princess because I want to be a king. But like Medea did look at it as, oh, I'm gonna kill our kids to get you back. But she might have also been looking at it like, oh, I don't want them to be raised in a society where they'll be treated like crap. So it can like probably go like both. Like I think she might have had like a mix of both there.
Or then I thought that because she wasn't completely human, that they don't have the empathy and the feelings at like real people do, and that she just was kind of heartless. And maybe in the afterlife they would have she would have been with them anyway or something, because if if it was from the gods, like one of the posts that I read, I didn't even think of it, about Cupid and the other one in the beginning who kind of made him fall in love, her and Jason fall in love. It could have just been all set up from the beginning because they made him fall in love, and then it all went into everything else. And she could have just not had empathy and not had feelings like everybody else, and it didn't matter to her that she was doing it out of revenge because she wasn't completely human.
So do you mean she's not completely human because she's a witch? Is that what you mean here, Kaylee?
What?
You said she doesn't feel
Because she
him.
has magical powers.
Right.
So she's not really a god, but she's not, like, didn't it say like the chariot that she flew away on was from one of her elders? Weren't they a god?
Right.
So she kind of falls down the line of that, and we've read before that gods are kind of heartless.
Yeah.
So I kind of looked at it from that perspective too.
Right. Maybe she's extra human here. Right. So
Yeah.
maybe that makes her sort of sociopathic.
Right. Right. Because at the beginning you do feel sympathy towards her and her situation, but then at the same time as it goes on, you're like, well, geez, she betrayed her whole family, and she started off from the get-go like kind of bad, and maybe it took him that long to realize it. Like, if you would do this and you would do that, and then he comes up with this cheesy excuse that he's doing it for the greater good of the boys, which is really a bunch of bull. But so she does have every right to be mad, but she doesn't have every right to carry out those actions like she did. I just think you can't really be as sympathetic towards the end to her as you were in the beginning, but at the same time you can understand, and you can come up with like a few different reasons why and try to justify it, none of which are really great. But
Yeah, you're exactly right when you say his reasoning, his logic was a bunch of bull, right? He's like, well, this will give them money. They'll never be poor, right? But you're not going to be the next in line. But they'll never hurt or anything. That's kind of what he says.
Yeah. And she goes on to say that they won't even be allowed to sit at the table of these people because they're bastard kids. So he's full of it because they're not, their lives will be ruined. And looking at it from a mother's, you could look at it from a mother's point of view like that, like she was trying to save them the heartache of a miserable life. Or then I looked at it from the God point of view. Then I looked at it from just complete insanity from of all of the everything that led up to it. And even the chorus, like as there is it explaining it to you, they're trying to talk her out of it, and they're like, how could you do that to your own kids? And it's kind of telling you that it's irrational. And but the satisfaction, like she's so satisfied when he gets there and it's too late, and she, like you said, when she's flying away on that chariot, I could just picture her like with this evil laugh, just with the kids corpses in the back, smiling down on him as she's flying away. And he's just like, she's like, haha, you made your bed, now lie in it.
Presley, I saw you unmuted a second ago.
Yeah, she wouldn't have been able to go back to her family either, would she? Like back in those times, they wouldn't have
Yeah,
accepted you back.
there was a lot of hard feelings after she killed her own brother.
Yeah, like she would, because she betrayed her whole family for him, and then he just came up with this excuse. So then it's kind of just her and her kids, and they all would have been exiled, and she wouldn't have had anywhere to go.
But that guy came along like right at the right time, and they talked about, she said, no matter what, you'll let me come there. No, made him swear like under the gods. So like she did have an escape route,
Yeah.
and somewhere that would be safe. I mean, the kids probably wouldn't have been as well respected or taken, but she did have an escape route. And didn't she try to go to her aunt's one time after they killed the family? Didn't she try to go to her aunt's, and her aunt turned them away?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
that guy, he promises him to help him like get a child.
yeah, that's the king of Athens, right? She
Yeah.
goes to the king of Athens and asks, hey, no matter what I do, promise you let me come, right? Of course, he doesn't imagine that she's going to do something like this. He's thinking, oh, I bet when he gets news out of it, he's like, oh shit, what did I do? But yeah, she makes him that promise, like, hey, I'll help you bear children with my herbs or whatever, right? If you will agree to this. So she could have arguably taken the children with her, and the children could have at least stood a chance. But no, she murders them. Yeah, it's definitely the hardest part about this play, I think, is when she actually murders the children. Like Euripides isn't nonchalant about it. Like he makes them scream on stage and everything. Like
They're like, where do I do? Where do I go?
it's really heartbreaking. It's still heartbreaking to read. That's probably the biggest taboo in Western culture, right? You don't mess with children. Like even today, like if you watch horror films or something, that's a place where they never go. Like they don't ever mess even with like child murder and stuff. Yeah, that is probably like even like video games, right? If you play something like Grand Theft Auto or something, right? You can murder everybody else on the game, but you can't murder a kid. So You might ask, how do you know that, Jeff? Have you tried to do it on that game, right? Maybe, right? But yeah, that is one of the big taboos of our culture. So arguably, maybe she has a legit beef the whole time. But once she does that, that's it. So this is still a value we still hold. Even, I mean, you just think about it, even in America right now, no matter if you're a conservative or a liberal, like even this past summer, the whole abortion debate came back open again. And because Roe versus Wade got overturned. Of course, there's a difference there because it's an unborn child versus a already born child. But that whole public discourse came back open again. This is definitely something that is still part of our values today. Medea is seen as one of the first monstrous women in literature, right? Well, you're going to read about several of them in the class, but she's a woman who gives other women bad names throughout history. A lot of the stuff you read, like men have pointed to this kind of stuff, like, you women, right? This is why you don't have rights. So yeah, she's a play that's this is kind of a play that's used to reinforce a lot of those misogynistic stereotypes about women. I told you guys that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Right? That's a joke that comes from this play. A couple of you guys I haven't heard much from. Gabe, what did you think about this play? Anything you want to add? Gabe. I don't know if you go by Gabe or Gabriel.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm so sorry. I haven't been very attentive to the class, and that's my bad completely. I'm very sorry. Which play?
Medea.
I've been listening. I remember.
What do you think about her character? Were you sympathetic to her? Would you find her to be completely monstrous?
I'm not certain completely.
You're not certain in the fact that you're kind of sitting on the fence, like you see the gray areas.
Yeah.
I'm kind of on the same boat, right? Just because, yeah, what she did was horrible, right? But at the same time, is she a product of the society? Like if ancient Greek society wasn't so hard on women, could a monster like this even be born? Right? Just because maybe like Kaylee, you mentioned the Andrea Yates earlier from the 90s, right? Maybe a monster like this could be born if things were a little easier for women. But again, it's a kind of a Bella, but we talked about nature versus nurture with Frankenstein, right? Is this a nature? This is again a nature versus nurture sort of question.
Yeah. When someone comes out as a monster in a society, it all depends on just like, because when a monster like that is created, it's all about how you said, like, just part of the time that they're in and the society that they're in. And that's happened throughout history with people, and even now, like people that have grown up to be terrible people because of like their home life or something. So I don't know if it could be better if women were treated differently, but and it also depends on the type of person. and their parents, of course, but it's all about the environment that they grow up, like how they're nurtured.
Yeah, this relates back to immigration, Gabe, because we were talking like, is Medea this way because she's not Greek, she's not cultured like all the rest of the Greeks are? So was she raised wrongly? Is that what caused her to do this horrible thing?
Well, that could be part of it. Like with immigration, if you weren't if you didn't grow up in an area and then you all of a sudden move to that different area, the way that you live is different from the way somebody else lives. So it's like putting a plant that's used to warmer areas and colder areas is going to react differently.
Kaylee, it looked like you were going to say something a second ago.
Well, it made me think of, like, you know how they say the preacher's daughters are the worst, and how she was the princess, and they really just get away with everything. They're used to having their way, and they're used to getting away with everything, and that could go back to that nature versus nurture. And if she's used to that lifestyle and just doing whatever and getting away with whatever, and she continues to do badly and come out on top just because that's what she's used to.
So you're saying because she kind of grew up in this royal background from this other country, maybe she's kind of a spoiled brat. She's always going to
Right.
get her way.
Right. Could be.
Matt, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, I was kind of 50-50 on how sympathetic I was for her as well, because I don't really because what they did to her was rough. Jason left her for another woman, and then they wanted to kick her out. But also considering what happened after and even before, really, considering that she killed her family to be with Jason.
I could kind of consider her like morally gray in a
Yeah,
way. So I can like see what you're talking about.
We just lost somebody. I don't know who we just lost. So somebody dropped off.
I feel like she was a loose cannon from the start, and she had a lot on her plate, and um, and just everything built up, and I guess she reacted, and it made her a monster. I mean, maybe she was a monster from the beginning.
Yeah, that you're kind of raising the question page from Aristotle. Like, kind of tragedy happened to the evil person. We can kind of ask, was she evil already because she did murder her own brother? But, we could even make the argument there that she was groomed into doing that by Jason.
Mm-hmm.
But wasn't that her stepbrother? It wasn't her real brother, right?
I don't know, Christine. I thought it was a real brother, but I might be wrong.
Okay.
I might be wrong. You might be wrong.
No, I thought it.
The way I kind of feel about that point is that it doesn't need to be an inherently good character. It just has to be one that is sympathetic enough. Because, I mean, here we we can all agree that Medea is kind of evil. I mean, she killed her kids, but we're all sympathetic towards her. And so her story is a tragedy because of that.
Right, just enough grayness. I think that's a good point, Holly. Just enough grayness can constitute a tragedy. Aristotle would definitely disagree with you, Holly. He thought that this play was absolute trash. He wrote about it. He hated this play. He thought it was corrupting the morals of the people of Greece and all this stuff just because of how awful she was. So he saw Oedipus as a good person, but definitely saw her as an evil person. The tragedy that comes is the victims of her murders. But when it comes to her, he didn't feel any sympathy.
It was kind of horrible that I understand her revenge plot against the princess and the king, but it was kind of horrible that she sent the kids in there with the cloak. That was kind of bad.
But you never know what you'd do if you were in her shoes, if someone would betrayed you that you love so much.
That's a heck of a love, right, Christine? To kind of even kill your own brother, right, for the sake of the love.
Yeah.
It's a-
She looks at love a lot different than what we look at love.
right?
She's got some issues.
Yeah, it's all encompassing passion for her, right? Like once she's in, she's all in. But a bit of a toxic relationship between the two, right? The OG toxic relationship in literature.
Yeah, both were kind of terrible when you think about it.
Yeah, the really sad question in the play is she murders her own children to get back at Jason. But did Jason really even care? Right? Like she had already done the damage, killing Jason's future, the woman he wanted to marry now. It's like, did he was getting ready to abandon the kids. Right? So what did he even care? Right? If she murdered them. That's kind of the sad part about the play. Like, was this just extra topping on the cake, or did he even really care? Maybe he did a little bit, but not much.
Well, he at least acted like he did. He tried to act like he did, but he was going to take him in with him and ask the princess if she would take him in, which she wasn't interested in until like Medea said, show her the stuff, then she will. And she did exactly like she said. And then whenever he did find out that they were dead, he went through that, oh no, but it could have been just because of everything, like everything that happened, not just the children. Because if he was willing to just up and leave them before, then who knows if he really cared or not.
Yeah, he's definitely taken aback at the end, but like he's crying out to the gods and all this. So he's already had a bad day at that point. Right? That's just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, whenever we talk about fate and futility and all that, that's how I've always viewed the play. Like, she did all this. Did he even really even care at the end?
I guarantee you he'll never forget.
Yeah, he had to watch his future wife get her face melted off. And then he had to watch his father-in-law also get his face melted off. And that, as if the day wasn't bad enough already, right? Then he had to see his dead children. So, quite a play, right? Again, the Greeks think somebody, I forget who said it earlier. I think was it you, Amy? You said the Greeks are pretty messed up. I think that was you. The Greeks are something else. The literature just gets tamer from here, sadly. It's kind of hard to top this. Maybe not. Maybe not. We'll keep reading some pretty crazy stuff. The last play, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about it for at least a couple of minutes. And that would be Lysistrata, right? Aristophanes' famous comedy. Now, I talked about Aristotle earlier. He wrote a lot about tragedy. As far as comedy goes, again, none of the writings he had about comedy survived. So his theory about comedy and stuff, it's hard to say. But this, of course, this play's historical context, it comes when Athens and Sparta were in a war with each other called the Peloponnesian War. They were in this war against each other for many years. But the play's context is the women are tired of this war. So the kind of joke of the play is women are finally taken over, right? The play's kind of got an inherent joke built into it that women are really the ones who control everything. Men like to think they're in control, but really women are in control. They just let men think they're in control. That's kind of the joke of the play. So women finally seize control in the play by refusing to put out for their husbands. And of course, we find out that lots of laughs and hilarity ensues from that. The women in the play arguably break before even the men do, right? Because the women want it just as much as the men. So, but lots of hilarity ensues from there. Of course, whenever we talk about comedies in this class, one thing to always ask yourself, comedies by their nature always have happy endings. You can't have a comedy and have it end tragically. Right? There's a such thing as a tragic comedy. Maybe a comedy's got kind of tragic elements built in. But if it's a comedy, it can't end poorly. So, needless to say, at the end of this play, everything kind of returns back to the status quo. Right? The women break, the men break. Once women kind of get what they want with this war, everything returns back to normal. So women kind of again assume the sort of joke, right? They really have power, but they're not going to show it. So at the end of the play, does anything really change? I guess that's the big question the play raises. But lots to say about the play. Like it's definitely a type of comedy it's kind of like if we were comparing it to a modern film or something, right? It's definitely it's kind of like Superbad or something like that, right? Like they're not they make dick jokes, right? They make all kinds of like crude jokes. So this isn't 18th century satire where they're trying to appeal to your brain, right? It's more or less a bunch of like bathroom jokes and stuff, right? That's a lot of like what the play is. I think it's hilarious. Like I think this play has aged extremely well, but maybe that says something about my sense of humor. I don't know, right? But yeah, I can appreciate a good body humor joke, right? A good fart joke or anatomy joke or something like that. Some people are like, that's kind of humor is too crude, right? Our humor has to be more sophisticated than that. Well, that's not what Aristophanes was about. So go ahead. What's your general thoughts on the play, guys? What do you think of this?
I was gonna say I like that part where like the old men chorus come in and they have those torches and their logs, and he was like, "Go ahead, we'll smoke them out. A slit will open somewhere." I thought that was funny, and it just makes it that much more funny because it's all these men. There are no women in it, and all these men, and they have just like boners all the time, and they're making these references to them, and then they're trying to hide them. But it's that much funnier because it's just men, so there aren't even women in the play, and it does kind of rhyme, and they are singing a lot, and that makes it funny. I thought.
Yeah, you raise a good point, Kaylee. Like, I don't know if we've talked about this much today, but there were no women actors on stage. Like, even the women parts were played by men. So this adds another sort of layer of double entendre to a lot of the things going on. When it comes to drama, women didn't go on stage until like the 1800s. A long time of drama where it was men playing women. Bella, I saw you were going to unmute. She want to say something?
Oh yeah. Honestly, the play really cracked me up too. Like I was sitting there reading it. I had to like stop reading for a few seconds to laugh. And honestly, I like to believe that like I wrote about this in my discussion post, but I kind of believe that Lysistrata was to me is sort of like a subtle take on feminism. It's like funny, but it's like I feel like everybody, like anybody who reads it can really get like some sort of message from it. And for me, I sort of got the message of feminism. Like women are allowed to make a change in society and women can make a change in society. Despite the fact that it was portrayed as a comedy back in those days because women didn't have many rights because of patriarchy. But like I feel like there's a message of women can change society. You just can't accept it because you men have boners all the time or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Women are really the ones who can do it. Right. I mean, again, it's men like to think they're in charge, but really it's the women in charge. Right. That's kind of the joke the play makes.
I think it's so outrageous though that it was more meant to be like a ridiculous idea that because they made it to end war, like you could like something like that could end war, made it that much more ridiculous that women could do anything and they were more being cruel and like a bunch of men with boners laughing and making jokes. I mean, when really women can and do make a difference, but then they were just it was more like a cruel joke.
Yeah, I liked how it was so
I think.
exaggerated and ridiculous. It made it so much better because it was so exaggerated.
You think if they had played it a little more realistically, that it wouldn't have been as funny, Paige?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, there's been actually a couple of instances in history where women have tried this very thing. That's something that you guys can Google later. Like there's a couple of instances where women have done this to good effect. Right?
I
Women,
saw that one you posted about, I don't know if it was in Colombia. I know a lot of them were in Colombia, but the dude said it was his favorite one because the whole thing was it was these women on this place and they had no roads, but there were guerrilla warfare fighters and they would come and they would sleep with them and he's like they were knocking them up and they couldn't get to the hospital, so they were actually dying from sex. He said that's why it was his favorite because they really like wouldn't put out because they were actually dying. So the government funded the roading so that they could come and sleep with these women. So it has worked, but it just makes you know back then they were just being funny. But so see it does. So women do make a difference and can. I
Yeah.
thought that was crazy. I was telling my husband about it. He was like, okay. I was like, I'll show you what.
So don't argue with me, right? I'll show you who's really in charge. Yeah. A lot of people find this message kind of like, especially if you've got more of a feminist sensibility these days, a lot of people find this play kind of off-putting. Like, can women make a difference besides doing this experiment, right? Like, it kind of a lot of feminists make the argument like this play sexualizes women too much, right? It makes, like, when it comes to the value of a woman, it shows that it's all entangled with sex in men's eyes, right? I don't know if you guys get what I'm saying here, right? But maybe the play sexualizes women too much. Maybe it's because it's a male writer writing the play, right? But that argument is definitely made, showing the play's not as feminist as we might think. Bella, you raised the point about
I think
feminism.
that's true. But where the things that Lysistrata says and does kind of counteracts some of that and makes it more towards the feminist side. It helps a lot.
What do you mean there, Kaylee?
Like, because she's not just sex wise or sexuality. She actually is smarter and comes up with good ideas, and she's witty, and she stands towards men not just in a sexual manner. Like, she uses her knowledge and she uses her smarts, and she's bold as far as like standing up for women other than just sexually. Even towards the other women, she gives them a role model to look up to. Like, look, it's not just all about this. We can stand our own ground. And even towards the sexual desire, she does. She helps them hold them off too. But she kind of gives them a role model and shows them that women are more than just objects, which is kind of odd, considering the play and what it's about and what it does, because it's like, but I still think it's jokingly. He's doing it jokingly, but at the same time, it is showing different things. Does that make sense? Am I saying it
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you said that beautifully. Like, Lysistrata's character, herself, like, she shows a lot of. She's a very capable character, right? She's not some stereotype. Right? I think you said that really well.
And I read that Lysistrata is one of his only plays that is actually named after the main character. That stands out in itself.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. Yeah, I haven't read a lot of Aristophanes' other plays besides this, honestly. So yeah, I've always wanted to read more of his stuff. He wrote another one called The Birds, I think. That's a famous one. Bella, you started us on the feminist angle a second ago. What do you think of all that? You kind of agree with what Kaylee said?
Yeah, I can I can see that. And also, I kind of think that although the writer did portray Lysistrata in a jokingly sort of way, I feel like he might have had a little bit of a feminist side to him, considering the way he wrote Lysistrata, because she, as Caitlin said, she's all smart and witty and has great ideas and very encouraging, which is great qualities in a person. And normally in like other Greek plays and stuff, that's how men are written. Because, patriarchy, men are better than women, so let's write them great. And let's write women as like objects. But in this play, Lysistrata is portrayed as sort of like how a man would be portrayed. And I like that because women aren't objects, and this kind of shows it, even though it's doing it in a jokingly way, considering the context at the time. But I still think there's like a little bit of a, oh, I actually don't believe completely that men are better than women there, you know?
And also, he never showed favoritism for the men either.
Exactly.
How do you mean there, Beach?
He never.
You mean he's like, he doesn't like portray the men like, oh yeah, they're really in the right here.
Yeah, he never made it to seem that the men were better than the women. Equals, I guess, but not. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're right.
Well, and when they poured the water on those old men, it kind of was like showing them as that's all that they were worried about. Here, cool down, take a bath. So it kind of put them in both lights.
Yeah, the play is equally as harsh on men as it is on women. That's all us nerdy men ever think about, right? That's kind of the joke. Maybe the play's not wrong about that, right? Maybe we men are pretty crude creatures. Matt, Gabe, and Colton are just sort of thinking, well, maybe not. I'm only speaking for myself here. I can't speak for them.
As a nerdy man, I won't reveal anything.
Fair enough, Gabe. Fair enough.
I do like to play how it shows like equality between men and women, how one is not weaker than the other. And even though one side may be treated differently, that doesn't determine their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, this is as close to gender equality, right, as we're going to ever see in the ancient Greeks.
I like the fact that it's all going on during the war, so he's like mocking everybody in their face. I don't know if that's wrong. Maybe I shouldn't like that, but it's like he's bold enough to say all this and do all this while the war is going on because he doesn't like the politicians, does he?
No.
Right. So that's bold and that's funny in itself.
Yeah, I know that historically Aristophanes was censored a lot because of that very reason. Like when Pericles is known as the great ruler, the great ruler of Athens, when he was in charge, like he kind of let Aristophanes slide because Pericles is kind of cool like that. But I think is it another Creon? No, it's Cleon. That's who became dictator after Pericles. He censored Aristophanes. Like I think he even threw Aristophanes in jail a couple of times. So
did it say he got sued?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cleon was known as being really tyrannical. I don't know if any of you guys in here played the Assassin's Creed games. I was gonna say if you have, like they make a whole thing of this on one of those games. Yeah, it's kind of cool how much you learn about history from those games. Yeah, they show how Pericles was a good ruler, and then once they ousted him and put Cleon in, things started going downhill. The golden age of Greece actually ends with Sparta eventually beating Athens during that war. Sparta eventually wins, and they sack Athens. So that kind of ends this golden age of culture and drama and philosophy and science. Not long after that, Alexander the Great, or Macedonia, conquers all of Greece and kind of unites it all into one country, and also conquers most of the known world. So we actually owe it to Alexander for conquering all these places and spreading the Greek language and Greek culture and all this stuff. It's like one reason why we still study this stuff, why the Greeks are so foundational, is because Alexander spread Greek culture, Greek religion, Greek ideas all over the world. It's a fun little history lesson for you guys to in their units. So this week officially ends our study of the Greeks, but it's not the end of our study of the ancient period. That'll be next week. So next week we will read the Aeneid. It's from Virgil, the great Roman poet Virgil. You guys have already read Catullus, who was also a Roman poet. So, but Virgil was the great epic writer. So he was like the Homer of Rome. So next week when we get together, we'll talk. The Aeneid, students often, most of the time, students don't like it as much as the Iliad. I'll definitely be interested to see what you guys think. But to give you guys just a little bit of context for what you're going to read for next week, it's the story about the founding of the city of Rome. So you guys will find that there's a character named Aeneas. He was a minor character in the
Oh, I
Iliad.
was about to say, is
Yeah.
it about Romus and Remus?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question, Bella. The Romulus and Remus story is the story of how the Roman Republic was founded. When Augustus Caesar became Caesar of Rome, he wanted to come up with a new national myth about how the Roman Empire was founded, not the Republic, the Empire. So he commissioned Virgil to write the story, the Aeneid, which traced Rome's origins all the way back to the Trojan War. And you'll find that this character named Aeneas is he was a minor character in the Iliad. If you go back and read the Iliad, he's in there. He's a really minor character. They kind of go back and make this minor character a major character. Like he leaves Troy before it falls, and then he goes on to found the city of Rome. That's his destiny. So next week, you guys will read about the ending days of the Trojan War when they bring the Trojan horse in and all that stuff. You'll read that story for next week. And then you'll read the tragic love story of Aeneas and Dido, which is a classic love story gone wrong in the ancient world. And Aeneas and Dido fall in love, but it ends really badly. So yeah, you guys will get a love story for next week of sorts. Yeah, next week's all about Roman propaganda, right? The whole play was written because of Roman propaganda reasons. So plus it'll be a nice end on this whole unit because you'll see how the Iliad story especially ends. Virgil fills in the details that Homer didn't fill in. So it'll be a nice end cap on our units. But I'll get you guys up some questions for Friday on the Old Testament stuff, and then next week we will regather for the Iliad, or for the Aeneid, I should say.
When do we get to hear the guest speaker? When is that? Not for a while?
Yeah, it won't be for a while yet. Probably like close to the beginning of October or so. That'll be when I have them come in.
And when do we need Paradise Lost and that other book by? Not till middle October or so.
Yeah, Paradise Lost will be October. Madame Bovary will be November.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I already recommended like a good edition for you to get of Paradise Lost, especially. It doesn't really matter what version of Madame Bovary you get, but Paradise Lost, I would definitely recommend that.
Do you know anything about the Amazon Prime student? Like with our Southern IDs, do we get Amazon Prime student?
You should be able to get a discount on Amazon Prime with your Southern email. Yeah. Yeah, that gives you not only the free shipping and all that, you can also watch movies and all that on it. So yeah, definitely take advantage of that. My student eligibility ended a long time ago, sadly. I milked it as long as I could. Eventually they were like, no more. You got to pay now. Jeff Bezos needs to go to space. So yeah, so I have to pay up now. So enjoy it while you have it, guys. That's my advice. Any last minute questions or comments before we depart? Christine, I just read your comment that you've been out of school so long that you're learning all this stuff. I'm glad that I'm exposing you to some new stuff. You know, the Greek periods are definitely a love of mine. That's one reason why I love to teach this class. None of the other English faculty at Southern will even go near this class. I think it's the funnest one. So hence the fact that I'm no longer a full-time professor at Southern, and I'm still teaching it, right? Let me just make sure real quick. I get it. I have everybody down. I know somebody left earlier. But let me just make sure I check everybody off before I let you go. Holly, Colton, Gabe, Bella. I think I know who. Paige, Amy, Matt, Presley, Christine. Yeah, I know who left. All right, so I'll see you guys next week. Take care. Enjoy your week.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Happy early
Goodbye.
birthday.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
happy birthday.
Thank you.